All right, we're back with part 2 for chapter 7. So where we ended off was here. And this is showing what's called evidence of evolution, evidence of DNA and organisms that are connected, and what's called bioinformatics. So if you're looking at it in something with information, informants, you're putting things together like on a chart, like the one you see here of primates. So these are all considered primates because we have a similar mammalian body. We're mammals. We use 2 legs, but sometimes walk on all 4. We have similar eating styles, characteristics, behaviors, all similar DNA as well. So we all fit into the category of primates. We're also studying, so if this is information, it's about biology. So that's why we have bioinformatics. So here it's showing the DNA, which everything that's alive has DNA. Plants and fish and mammals and bacteria and protozoa and amoebas and everything we've talked about in class all has DNA. A rock doesn't because it's not alive and it's made out of minerals. It's not made out of DNA. So with DNA, we can study it and see who is close to who in the realm of genetics and ancestors in the tree of life. So in looking at all of this, moving down, looking at our evolution, how do we know where we come from? So here is some of the islands, not the Galapagos, but a similar concept of looking at how organisms like squirrel A on the mainland and squirrel B on the island, if they were to be able to mate together, they would have young that would look similar, but they're kept separate by a water source. Sometimes it can be a mountain, sometimes it can be a man-made barrier, but when organisms are not put together, they start to evolve as subspecies. So you might have the brown squirrel, and then you might have the gray squirrel. So they're both squirrels, but they're both a species slightly different based on how they evolved over time. Birds are the same. This bird A from the mainland, bird B from the island, similar with fish. So it depends on how they meet. When we get down to 2 concepts, there's micro, remember that means small, macro means bigger of the 2. So when we look under the microscope, you can have a microorganism or a macroorganism. Macro would be the bigger one. We also have that with evolution. So microevolution means that small changes in genes happen over time. Macroevolution would be a big change in genes happened over time. So here is a gene pool talking about the first generation of babies, the second generation, and then the third. And as you can see, the pink that's there is starting to come out more and more in the generation. So something in the gene pool is this tiny little evolution, a microevolution that happens over time. If we keep scrolling through and we go down to what's called Darwinian fitness, Darwin had some concepts. Remember, we talked about evolution, natural selection, something also called fitness. And that is what makes the gene go from the population of one generation to the next generation of individuals. So being the fittest isn't necessarily someone that goes to the gym all the time, because there are people that never work out in their life and their internal organs are much healthier than someone at the gym. So it's not always what we think of as healthy and fittest. It's who has the better gene. So maybe a better gene is you being tall because you can reach all the food on the top shelf and all the short people can't and they starve. Maybe fittest is brains. Maybe you know street smart and that will keep you safe rather than someone else that's only book smart and has no idea how to act on the street. So fitness is sort of relative based on the environment, not necessarily the strongest. It's who can adapt. So as we go through all of this, there's a couple different types of how animals adapt, how they evolved based on natural selection. It's sort of like traffic. Some days traffic goes smoothly, it's same in, same out every day. Sometimes traffic does that silly little bottleneck, which is one of our terms down here, where all of a sudden it goes down to a lot of cars, 4 lanes down to 1 lane. That's a bottleneck. And it's very irritating during construction, isn't it? Well, that's also a way of natural selection, where you have all the genes that are coming down to a few. So these 4 terms, genetic drift, bottleneck, and the founder effect, a gene flow, or sexual selection are all ways that naturally select organisms to do these minor evolutions, either microevolution or macroevolution, but there's 4 terms that go with this. So looking at them, the first one, genetic drift, that's a change due to chance. So it just drifting, you were drifting down the lazy river and by chance you ran into a friend. That's genetic drift. So that's a change in the gene pool due to chance. So maybe there's a really tall elephant. That would be a change in gene by chance. So that's genetic drift. The next one, the bottleneck we talked about, all of a sudden genes and population is dramatically brought down from 4 lanes to 1 lane. So there's a big change. Sometimes that can be like a hurricane or a tornado or some big event like a volcano or earthquake that a whole population is brought down to a few. It could be human, man-made things as well. Then you have a founder effect, which is similar, but individuals go to a new isolated habitat. So maybe a bunch of us decide, Pennsylvania's not the place to be. We're going to go, a few of us, to an island, have our own community, have the beach, have fun, drink lots of Malibus, I guess, because it's the islands. That would be the founder effect. A few left and migrated and set up their own new habitats. That's founder effect. Or bottleneck that happened because more of an environmental thing. Gene flow is just a change of populations due to migration. Sexual selection, you've heard of these terms before in various areas of your life, I'm sure, but even humans do that. How did you select the person you're with right now? Was it arranged marriage? Probably not, based on our culture and our time, but there was some form of sexual selection. Do you like tall men? Do you like short women? Do you like quiet people, loud, obnoxious people? Do you like helpers? Do you like givers? Do you like very colorful dressers? Plain people? Well, this is all type of sexual selection, and all animals do this. Females choose their mates based on their traits. I don't want to say appearance, but on their traits. So think about the peacock bird. A male peacock has a huge display of feathers that he fluffs up behind his back, and he'll walk around with these feathers saying, "Look at me and I'm lovely." The female peacock has no big feathers and she's brown. So she's not very attractive. The males that have the biggest display of these feathers will get the female, breed, and their species will continue. This happens a lot. Think about a lion. Think about a walrus. Those males, they have to be the biggest and the strongest and chase the other males away. Otherwise, they're considered weak and the females won't breed with them. So this happens often. Think about all the birds you see right now. Springtime birds, have you seen the cardinals? They're red. Those red birds are the male cardinals. The females are brown with a tiny little red on the edge of their feather, and that's it. So if he has the most beautiful red color, he will attract a mate. Songbirds, birds that have genetically had their vocal cords hurt, can't sing, females won't find them to mate. So some birds have learned to sit next to a good songbird that attracts females and get a female that way. So there is some other intelligence going on. But this is sexual selection. There's that peacock. Here's that male, and here's the female. What if a bratty kid at the zoo plucked out half his feathers? Well, he's probably not going to be able to mate because a female sees those as bad traits, and that the survival of the species won't happen because you won't have those feathers. And those feathers are to make him look bigger so predators won't want him. The predators want something small and defenseless. So having those big feathers helps him. So moving on to a couple more pages. Here's our macro evolution. Again, big changes in the population, still over time, but on a bigger scale than the micro. Speciation is what the next word is called down here, and it's an evolution that gives a new species. So maybe we have the brown squirrel and the gray squirrel, and all of a sudden we have white squirrels. And they're not albino, they're just white in color. That would be speciation. Some subset of the squirrel evolved into a new type of squirrel. Again, sorry for my dogs. Here's some other with evolution and how species, especially a butterfly, have changed over time. This is to make them look bigger and that they have more spots in their eye spots. So most of the time, a predator will bite them on the back and they'll survive rather than the front end. This is called branching evolution, where you have one species and it starts to branch off just like up here, but all of a sudden, oh, you have a new branch, a new species. That's called branching evolution. The next one, of course, the dinosaurs. When we talk about life on the planet and how long Earth has been here, it's been here for billions of years. On the Earth, we always think about one mass extinction, and that was 65 million years ago with the dinosaurs, and they were wiped out. There's conspiracy theories on it being some sort of plate tectonic earthquake thing. There's also been an asteroid that hit. There's just so many theories, or we don't know why they left. So we know there was a mass extinction. Something global had to happen. Of course, there was no humans then. Something global had to happen on a massive scale to kill them off. So that's not the only time there's been a mass extinction on the planet. There's actually been five mass extinctions. We just know the dinosaur one because that's the one that if we were with them, we could have been killed and have our own predator. So we always remember the dinosaurs. But this chart shows you when these mass extinctions were. And there was 5 of them. Many think that we're going to have another extinction. Who knows when or why, but it's just a period of when Earth happens. So if we have extinctions of these big dinosaurs, that means another group of organisms will come. So it was the rise of the mammals. So many mammals ended up surviving, coming across into the future eras of the world. So here we have elephants that are classified as large terrestrial animals. So large animals that live on the ground rather than the ocean. So we have the elephant, we have a bison, we have dolphins, we have brown bears, like polar bears too, and we have bats. So these are all connected to this one mammal 200 million years ago, and how that tree branch evolved into these other mammals, which again is a macroevolution. So it's a big evolution over time, which is millions of years. It won't happen in one generation. It won't happen in 50 years, none of that. So as we look into the Earth and thinking about the Earth is made into periods, and each period is in an era as well. So you might hear the era of the dinosaurs. And the eras you normally hear, especially if you've been watching Jurassic Park, which has been on all day today, they talk about the Mesozoic era and the Paleozoic era. And all of those are specific times in Earth where big things happen, like plants came about, and then flowering plants came, and mammals and birds and reptiles. So all these happened during a certain era of the Earth, which was life. We also have the Precambrian period over here. So this is what it's showing. And here's some details. So the Precambrian area, which is one of the first eras, we talk about the Earth forming, land forming, the oldest known prokaryote. Remember, that's more like bacteria, because that's what could survive then, because it was awful gas. Many things couldn't live off of the atmosphere and the air, not a lot of oxygen. So these little forms of bacteria survived. The oldest known fossil was there as well. Then you get the next era closest to us, which is the Paleozoic era. So after the Earth has been forming for a bit, you have all of these animals, and all of the oceans start to get these animals too. And then plants on land start, but they weren't flowering plants yet. They're just plant, like ferns and trees. Animals from the oceans and lakes and rivers started to migrate onto the land. So you have lizards and snakes, where they think came from water sources, evolving over time to become terrestrial organisms or land animals. And then all of a sudden, you have this massive extinction that happened. And that was in this Paleozoic era. The next era you have is Mesozoic. So this is where the dinosaurs roam the Earth and flowering plants started to come. After Mesozoic, you have Cenozoic. So this is where we have the mass extinction from the dinosaurs. Mammals start to really grow. They diversify. We get lots of different mammals. And the first appearance of what we think are anatomically correct modern humans. So when we think of Neanderthal, we think of Lucy, which was a popular skeleton, Neanderthal time period. Those weren't necessarily related to us of a modern human. They came off a different branch, and we're looking for a common ancestor we both could have come from. So this 200,000 years ago was the appearance of the first modern-like human that we know of, and this is a skeleton of them. So of course it doesn't look like our skeleton. And why all this is happening, why the Earth is having these kind of mammal explosions, life explosions, is about tectonic plates. So here's the first original landmass, and it divided as the Earth grew. And as it divides, it pools. The ocean pools, land masses pool, and those are called plates. They're called tectonic plates. And you can sit on an ocean plate or a land plate, and underneath is the mantle. And I think that's about all for the chapter that's important, as well as terms and concepts. And I just want to double check. We have reproductive barriers that make animals have a hard time, and I believe it's a little bit of GMO stuff. Some of the things that make it hard for animals to reproduce are mechanical incompatibility, so their body parts don't match up in order to reproduce. They might be from the wrong organism, or hybrids can't reproduce